Today's guest has an interesting background story. He experienced a pivotal moment in his childhood when he was just 9 years old. He had watched his father work relentlessly, only to become extremely ill and pass away at the young age of 42. This life changing event inspired my guest to dedicate his life to helping busy fathers and then mothers age 40 and up to lose weight, build muscle, and improve their overall health for the well being of their family. Dr. Anthony Balduzzi has appeared on NBC, ABC, The Steve Harvey Show, In Shape, and Men's Health. Dr. Balduzzi is a licensed naturopathic doctor who holds dual degrees in nutrition and psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. He is also a former national champion bodybuilder, something we have in common, and he has helped over 60,000 families across more than 100 countries with his Fit Father and Fit Mother project programs. The death of your father was a pivotal moment, Dr. Balduzzi. Can you describe how that affected you and how that led to the Fit Father and Fit Mother projects?
Absolutely. And it's really nice to be here. I thank you for having me for this conversation. It's a really striking experience as a child to see your parents, especially when you have a good relationship with them and you look up to them so much, to see them kind of wither away. And first I'll talk with in the perspective of my dad. I mean, he got a cancer diagnosis and he worked so hard, was so stressed and was trying to provide for the family, but his health was definitely put on the back burner. And to see the man I looked up to most in life, get so sick and be confined to basically a hospice bed and die in our home when he was just in his early 40s and I was 9, it rocked my world. I mean, the first thing is you experience the massive pain of loss and the destabilization of my world, of what I thought was true. But the seeds of that experience were also me realizing how important our physical health is, and that insofar as we have a lot of responsibilities in life and things we want to do, when we lose our physical health, like that's the foundation. And it's easy, I think, in the earlier years, the third, maybe even fourth decade of life, to work really hard and not prioritize your physical health, but that ends up catching up with you later on in life. And then the personal aspect of it was when I was so sad and broken, a beautiful experience that happened is my mom gave me a pair of my dad's old dumbbells as a gift. And I would keep them under my bed at night. And after mom tucked me in, many nights I'd pull them out and I started to do some exercises because I had this idea in my young mind that I wanted to become so strong that cancer couldn't affect me. And I also found as I started to train, even though I didn't know exactly what I was doing, I started to feel better. And this little equation started to go off in my mind that it's like if I have inputs and I put inputs into good training and focus and I try to channel all this chaotic energy I had inside of me in a constructive way, I started to heal and I got stronger and I started to get a sense of confidence. So I'm like, there's something here. And I just started to relentlessly pursue health and fitness, almost like to an obsession. And I think it was definitely a response to grief, but one, I guess you could say a positive one in that sense. I stopped eating sugar or birthday cake or sodas. And I started trying to learn how to eat healthier foods and started to exercise. And that snowballed into, getting into high school and then into university. I became very, very physically fit and strong. People started asking me for advice. I started competing in bodybuilding and building up my body, and I had some success with that. And of course, started to help a lot of clients along the way create plans that worked for them as well. And then when I got into naturopathic medical school, I saw many people like my dad. Basically, they weren't always had the same chronic disease, that he had, cancer, but it was often cardiometabolic stuff, but they couldn't find a way to juggle everything that was going on in their lives. And I also reflected back and looked at my mom, single mom, raising two young kids, trying to hold it together, how the stress weighed on her and how it affected her. And I knew there had to be a way that we can create a system for people to live healthy, one that transcended this kind of diet or that kind of diet, one that focused on sustainability and just reasonable consistency. And so it took me some time, but I started to develop these programs. I put them online, and over the last 10 years, I've been refining them and helping parents go through. And now I'll say, like, I have a very well-tuned approach to nutrition, exercise, psychology, accountability, the fitness aspects for people over 40. And as you mentioned in my bio, I've helped over 60,000 families in over 100 countries go through this and get life-changing results. So when I look around, the last thing I'll say on this is I believe there is so much opportunity today for people in the back half of their lives to be incredibly fit, healthy, vibrant, expressive. Like, I think you're a living example of what's possible when you have these gears turning. And then other people are at a crossroads where if you just follow the current of our modern sick culture, like the end part of life looks really, really poor. I mean, chronic disease, prescription medications, losing your health. And I don't want that for people. I want them to be able to express themselves. For me, it's as much spiritual as it is physical. It's about this holistic expression of life. It's about being there for our families, breaking free from the things that are binding us in terms of our bad habits and mental behaviors. So yeah, I love talking about this stuff, and I'm grateful to share my story.
I was thinking as you were talking, the 40s, I felt, because I'm 62, so the 40s to me was the most challenging time in my life. And that is kind of where things can go south, so to speak, because well, as a woman, you're kind of in this sandwich generation where maybe your parents start ailing. So you're taking care of ailing parents, but then you've got young children, maybe there's a career, and you're trying to balance all of this, and it can feel like health takes a complete back seat because
Yeah,
you've got all these other priorities. And so I find it very, very challenging, even more challenging than the 50s, because yes, there's the hormonal changes, but you have more space cleared, more mental space, more time. Do you find that decade to just be pivotal?
absolutely. Because it's that transition point between having some of the vitality of youth that you had in your 30s. So maybe the habits haven't changed as much as they need to be dialed in the fifth and sixth decades of life. And then the stress and the bandwidth issue is the big thing in the 40s for most of the clients that I help. And then when the stress happens, that's when like the unraveling of the habits start to fall off. And for every person, it's different. It's maybe I just feel like I can't find the time to exercise, or I stress eat, or I'm not sleeping and maintaining a good circadian rhythm, so my hormones are off. And then I guess it creates this domino effect that gets people in this place of feeling really stuck. And then when you repeat this feeling of being stuck and frustrated for over a decade, now you're picking up a degree of like mental baggage and past experiences and relationships to your body that inherently need to be unwound or healed in the process of healing your physical body. Because it's often our subconscious mindsets, our relationship to our health, and of course the schedule and the bandwidth. All these things interplay. And when I look online right now, so much of the conversation is about tactical stuff related to, is this diet better, or is this macronutrient better, or is this supplement better? But quite frankly, in my opinion, that's not the stuff that's really holding people back. It's more of the behavioral psychology, it's the habits, it's creating the space in your life to have a consistent health routine. It's all the stuff that's more psychological than necessarily even nutritional. We do need good nutrition science applied, but I think it's more about habits and routines. And especially if you're busy, you need to be able to find the eye of the storm, if you will, to be consistent.
Oh, so true. I love what you said because you can hand somebody the perfect plan. Here's your nutrition plan, it's solid. Here's your exercise plan, your training, your weight training. But if they can't implement, if they
Right.
can't ever get to that gym or get to the store or buy those groceries or meal prep or whatever it is, nothing's going to happen.
For sure.
And so that mindset, for lack of a better term, I'm not real fond of the terminology mindset, but it's the most important thing, and it's where we
Mm-hmm.
have to start. Now, do you see a difference because you're working with men, working with women, and you have the two different groups, and I'm assuming they're completely separate, so it's not like
Mm-hmm.
you have the men and
Yes.
women. And okay, are you finding you have to address different things with men than with women? Because I hear this, and I hear it from a lot of men. They feel like men are in crisis right now. Are you finding the same thing to be true?
Well, I am a fan, and I always have been. And maybe it was just because of my upbringing. Like, I was brought up in a Catholic boys' school, and I had a lot of friends who went to the Catholic girls' school down the street. And I think there is power in being around people of the same gender who have similar predispositions and struggles, and maybe even similar cultural factors. And there's just a relatability and maybe a vulnerability that tends to happen in those spaces. Like a girls' night out, I'm sure ladies talk about more things that they wouldn't necessarily even speak with their husbands. And so I think the safe space of being open and vulnerable is a big aspect of a successful health journey. So that's one part, I guess, the cultural and vulnerability and emotional intimacy that happens in these types of groups. And I guess there are big cultural things that are happening right now. I think on the men's side of things, some certain guys do feel like they're under attack, maybe underappreciated, massively taxed in terms of their bandwidth, feeling their vitality kind of being sucked down the drain, lowering testosterone levels for many factors for men and women. Obviously, as you talk about so deeply in this podcast, you know, the hormonal changes that happen in the fifth decade of life, the seasons of transition as kids get out of the household and there's new beginnings, and the stuff that happens maybe in the later fifth to sixth decades of life. These are all very, very relevant. Now, on the actual implementation of the training and what's biologically unique or different for men and women, there are fundamental massive overlap. It might be 75% the same. There are optimizations that you can make on top of things. Training might be a little different in some scenarios here. Nutrition might be a little different around cycles, et cetera. But yeah, I think it's mostly, in my opinion, the psychological and intimacy aspect that really feeds into having the two separate programs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think both men and women struggle. They might struggle in different ways. Yes, the men don't have the hormonal fluctuations
Mhm.
that women do until they really get a little bit older with the drop in testosterone. But they have unique challenges, like you said, the mental, the psychological, the cultural, and what's
Yeah,
expected of them, and the pressures, I
yeah.
think, are still very different between men and women. Now, with training, and I'm assuming you're a fan of strength training, resistance
Absolutely.
training, is there a mode of training, or do you vary it according to the individual?
Okay, so here's my fundamental premise. When someone comes in to our programs and they're looking to get healthier, and we could assume that they're at a point where they're not the most cardiovascularly or cardiometabolically fit. Like one, and this you talk about this on the podcast, and I'm just going to emphasize it. We want to improve their insulin sensitivity. We want to stabilize their blood glucose. We want to enhance their circulation, make sure there's more nitric oxide, more blood flow, and we want to help them build muscle and get down the proper movement patterns of strength training, as that's so important as we age. So we do strength training, and we prescribe it in two different types of ways at the beginning of our programs. The main way, and this is like just the one type of workout that people can do if they do nothing else, we call like metabolic resistance training, which are basically like strength circuit training. It's taking the fundamental strength motions that you want to be great at and they're really bang for your buck, the squats, the rows, shoulder presses, deadlifts. And you can do these with dumbbells or kettlebells in a fashion where there's low rest in between exercises. So you're getting a great functional movement pattern, strength training, and cardio all in one 30 to 45-minute workout. And it's certainly not the only way to do it. You can certainly do classic strength training where you do a set and you rest for a minute, 2 minutes, et cetera, and then separate that from your cardio. It just seems for us with a lot of busy parents, we can say, hey, in 30 to 45 minutes, you can get a wonderful exercise workout in that doesn't require much equipment at all, that hits your total body, that gives you benefit for the next few days. And you're hitting these three factors of strength, flexibility, and cardio all in one. And so in the beginning, we're getting people healthier. I believe these cardio metabolic workouts are super, super effective and obviously time efficient and joint friendly. So that's a plus. It eliminates a lot of obstacles. And doing that a few times per week, we're huge advocates of daily walking and daily activity, and that being even more foundational than formal workouts, if you will. We've had clients on both the Fit Father and the Fit Mother side lose 50 to 100 pounds, only walking, only changing the nutrition. Obviously, it gets a lot better if you're doing the strength training. The fitness is phenomenally more effective to do the strength training, but we believe daily activity is the foundation. We sprinkle in these cardio metabolic workouts. We are a fan of doing cardio in the form of high intensity interval training. It's a nice way to get it in and has a lot of benefits for a lot of aspects of health. But yeah, strength training is foundational. And as people progress and they get closer to what their ideal body weight or body fat levels are, we have ongoing programs that are more classic strength training, really geared for building muscle and lean tissue. Obviously, the cardiometabolic workouts like the strength training cardio workouts combined do that to a certain extent, but I'd say it's a little more of a mixed of training effect versus like really heavy lower rep strength training.
You know, I'm in agreement there. My workouts are very similar.
Mm,
Because I'm of the premise like, yeah, straight sets and lifting heavier, it has its place. And by straight
yeah.
sets, for the listener, what I'm meaning is you do, say, 12 reps, you rest
Mhm.
45 seconds to a minute, and then you go to the next one and the next one. But I find for the majority of women that come into my program, they're really not ready to lift heavy enough for
Totally.
that to even be beneficial. And they really need to be moving. Like weight
Yes.
loss is generally a goal, fat loss is a goal. They
Yes.
need the muscle and they're short on time. That's
Yes.
another issue. Maybe they're working out from home. That's another
Hmm.
issue. And so
Yes.
the circuits work beautifully. And
Hmm.
so I do the same thing and
Nice.
the majority of my women are on that unless they come and say, okay, I'm ready to go to the gym, I'm ready to lift heavier, and then we shift the program. So and I hear a lot of people downing that, like, well, circuit training, oh, you can't build muscle, that's not effective, this and that. It's like, no, it is if it's done properly. And again, there's just not one answer,
Hmm.
one thing that people can do that's going to work for everyone.
For sure. I completely agree with you. And I'm glad that you've landed on that personally with your clients. And the workouts are more engaging, they're fun. You can get rid of equipment limitations. You can even do body weight versions of these things. Obviously, using weights would be more beneficial. And I'm also an advocate for people like really looking at their training through the lens of those friction points, like what prevents you from strength training. Like, are you really strapped for time and you can only get 2 sessions in per week and you have a limitation of equipment? So, okay, let's build around that. Let's not try to take your natural life structure and try to fit that into a training plan. Let's try to fit the training plan into your natural life structure. Obviously, we want to build new habits and things are going to morph and meet in a certain extent in the middle. But if you're starting from zero and doing some intense lifting workout in the gym 4 days a week is probably not going to happen and gain you traction. And the cool thing is you don't need to. I think one of the it might seem like a benefit and a cost, but as we get older, our recovery capacity from exercise does decrease to a certain extent. And training is a stimulus for the body. It's like creating these effects that then the body goes, heals, and repairs. So it's not like you need to do this every single day. A couple of pulses of strength training per week is plenty. Like if you were a person who didn't exercise at all in strength training, you even did one full body strength training session per week, would be 1,000 times better than doing absolutely nothing. You'd still get good training effect paired with nutrition. Obviously, it increases and it gets better, and it does get more fun the more you do it. I'm interested to hear if you agree with that as well.
I do. I think it needs to be enjoyable. You hit on that aspect of it because with women, I see this a lot. They might come from a group fitness. That's been the only type of fitness they've done is these group fitness classes. They like the pace, the faster pace. So the circuit training is good there. And I think having it fit into our lives, very important because if you hand them a plan for the gym and they can't drive to the gym or they're not ready for those heavier weights, that's going to do no good. And you also hit on, needing the recovery as we get older. I have my ladies usually tell me, how many days or, how many minutes in those days they have. And then I structure the workouts that way. I
Mm-hmm.
have women doing 2 a week. I have women doing
Yeah.
4 a week.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find too is, as we age, especially over 50, they're coming in with injuries. They're
Yeah.
coming in with disc problems. They're coming in with shoulder problems, hip problems, knee problems. I can't give them a routine that would overload those
Yeah.
joints. And I'm sure you have found the same thing too. People come in and maybe they have some nagging injuries that
Yeah.
are following them into the program. And I feel like the circuit training, it allows a little bit more flexibility that way,
Yes.
for
Yes,
sure.
and higher repetitions, which can be beneficial for the joints, create more lubrication. And a lot of people with these kind of chronic, long-standing injuries, if they're doing the right functional patterns and strengthening the musculature and all the connective tissue around it, can feel like you're in less pain when you actually start moving more than when you're sedentary, as long as you're training smart under great guidance like your programs or mine.
Yes, agreed. I have some pretty significant back issues. As my audience knows, I've talked about it a lot over the past 8 years, a couple of big injuries. And so my days of getting under a barbell and doing barbell squats and heavy deadlifts, I can't do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a very high risk for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to do higher rep. I have to get
Yes.
creative. I have to do single leg lunges
Yes.
and Bulgarian split squats and all of
Yeah.
the things because I can't do the heavy, I can't even do a leg press anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
you find what you can do and you do that and keep
Yes.
moving. And the walking.
Mm-hmm.
Walking is so underrated.
Yes.
I find that if I get in that movement from day to day, it's relatively easy for me to keep my weight stable.
Mm-hmm. I feel the same way, and it's a great tool on a couple of things. It's not just the obviously the calorie burn. It's depending on you walk, it can really help your whole hormonal regulation, your circadian rhythm. Like the morning walk, if that's a possibility in your routine, where you're breathing through your nose, you're getting natural sunshine, season permitting. Is so good for the vitamin D, for the serotonin synthesis when your eyes see the light. And after walking after meals helps regulate your blood glucose, can be very helpful. A great bonding time with your family to kind of relax and decompress the system. So I think we need to get out of this very rigid idea of what exercise looks like. And I like to make the distinction between daily movement is the baseline, formal workouts are what's on your schedule. And that's like the training plan. It's like training, but baseline movements there. And we just want to accumulate movement. I like to point to the pockets of longevity around the world, those centenarians who live to 100 plus. They're not doing P90X or even these circuit workouts that we're doing. They would probably benefit from doing some of these things, no doubt, but they live a long time eating natural non-processed foods, gardening, walking, being outside, having less stress in their lives, good family connections, connection to spirituality. So it's like to be healthy as a human and live a long life doesn't require the high intensity exercise. It does require lower stress living, lots of activity, good nourishing food without toxic byproducts. High intensity exercise can work, but we have a fast paced culture where we're skipping out on sleep and recovery. We have poor habits on nutrition. And we're just trying to push more on the gas. Oh, we just got to work out more and do more and do more. But the answer is not quite that. It's actually getting back to these more natural longevity rhythms, de-stressing the system, moving more naturally, breathing, drinking water, eating food. And I know that sounds easy when you just list off the list of things. It's like the art of implementation is where most people struggle. But the fact is, that's really what it requires to live a long, healthy life.
Yeah, it's not the extremes. It's the day to day. Are you hydrated? Are you
Yes.
getting enough quality sleep? Do you have a support system?
Mm-hmm.
Family around you? Are you moving? Because I've watched those videos too, and I'm always struck with just how much they're moving. They're
Yeah.
climbing stairs. I watched one where I think he was like 100 years old on horseback.
Yeah.
They don't stop moving. So I think that's huge in the unprocessed diet. Now,
Mm-hmm.
speaking of the nutrition and the diet, what is your boy? People have gotten so dogmatic about
Yeah.
this subject, and I just did a video on this. It's not one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, there's benefits to doing, let's say, keto for a brief period of time in
Right.
a therapeutic way. There's
Yes.
benefits to intermittent fasting. There's benefits, but when people just get on this track of it has to
Yes.
be this way and this is the only way, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that we're seeing the exact same thing happen in nutrition and diet culture as we've seen happen in religion. Someone particularly finds a very meaningful experience for them, or they're brought up in a kind of way of seeing it, and they believe that this truth is this narrow band of their direct experience. And then you have someone on the other side of things who has maybe even could be a polarizing view. So let's take like a carnivore person versus a vegan person, and both have had life-changing results. It's the only thing they could possibly sustain. It's the only thing that's reduced their inflammation, corrected their bowels, etc. So people are very passionate about these kinds of things. Where I fall is I'm kind of like more like a centrist in all of this, because I have personally over my fitness career tried all these different kinds of diets, and I also see the through line of the good principles that I know you share as well with good nutrition. So I'll throw off some high level stuff, and then we can talk about how it comes into an actual plan. You want to have a nutrition plan that keeps your gut healthy. And so, in my opinion, this does mean you're having some diversity of fibers coming from fruits and vegetables. And these are the fruits and vegetables that work uniquely for you, your palate, they make you feel good. And there is a discovery process with that. But we want to feed that prebiotic fiber for good gut bacteria, because a lot of the health and the immune strength and digestion all happens with a good gut. And there are certain foods that are just straight up inflammatory for many people. But there's certain foods that some people can eat that aren't inflammatory for other people. I think the dairy and the wheat are interesting kind of things, because some people tolerate them better than others. There's probably some genetics, there's probably some quality involved, but ideally you keep fiber in there. And that's why I also say, and I'm kind of a little bit of a defender of carbohydrates. They've been thrown out so hard because we're realizing how important stable blood sugar is, maintaining insulin sensitivity is. But that does not mean you need to have a zero or a low carb diet. That just means you need to have like these healthy carbs that don't spike your blood sugar. And typically those are the same carbs that are mixed in with fiber and vitamins and minerals. Like those are the beans, the certain kinds of fruits and the veggies. And it's okay if you have a little bit of quinoa or a sweet potato or something like this. It's just about the amount and getting it so it's a rhythmic thing. So I'm a fan of carbohydrates, but I don't believe we need to have super high carbohydrate diets. I think we can have like moderately balanced. I believe in the morning, it's a fine time for people to keep their carbohydrates a little lower. Naturally, we have cortisol that rises in the morning, elevates our blood glucose. So I'm not a fan of people spiking their blood sugar super high in the morning with very high carb foods. I think it's a time more to have meals like eggs and avocado, low glycemic fruits, maybe some overnight oatmeal if you want to do something like that, or maybe a power smoothie that has a lot of good superfoods and protein powder and stuff like that. Like has protein, fiber, healthy fats. Now, I'm going to move on to a couple just to kind of break down some other principles of nutrition. I do believe our bodies need to balance the fasting and the feeding windows. We have these two modes of metabolism. One's anabolic, it's driving protein synthesis through muscle tissue growth, through different amino acids and insulin. And then we also want to have things like break down and be able to get into the place where we take out the garbage metabolically speaking. So I do believe fasting and feeding can be woven in. It can look in many ways for different people. That doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
every single person needs to do daily intermittent fasting. I do believe most people would benefit from having that dinner meal a little bit earlier, allowing the body to sleep and have nicer restoration where you're not having too much heavy meals late at night, because that is a kind of stressful experience for a body that's trying to relax. I do think it's a good practice if it works for people and you've tried it out to do some occasional longer fasts. That doesn't mean you have to do it every single day, but a dinner to dinner fast once in a while can be very good for people. And for people, if they do enjoy fasting, doing some longer 48-hour, 72-hour fasting does have medical benefits, but it might not be right for every single person. But I'm not saying every person needs to skip breakfast or intermittent fast. It is a tool. It'll work well for some people, but the concept of taking breaks from food and allowing that deeper catabolic metabolism and autophagy to happen is good. The other aspect that is totally true, no matter what diet you fall on, is you want to have a diet that reduces inflammation in your body. And there's certain foods we can kind of point at that are probably broadly inflammatory for most of us. Super high sugar foods, a lot of really processed crappy oils and foods that are fried in those kinds of oils. Most stuff that is just like really refined carbohydrates and the packaged box crap. I love this simple like great great grandmother test. If your great 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 grandmother could recognize it as food, typically like a single ingredient food, like a vegetable is a vegetable, salmon is salmon, nuts are nuts. Like by and large, those are the foods that we should build the majority of our diet around. Now, I think on the plant-based versus animal protein thing, I think there are a number of benefits of having certain kinds of animal proteins in the diet. Like if you have like eggs, for example, the choline in the eggs is so helpful for very many people for cognitive health and the fat soluble vitamins. Many people don't eat it these days, but liver and foods like this are just chock full of tons of micronutrients. The cold water fatty fish like salmon and sardines are very beneficial. At the same time, I don't think we need to be eating nearly as much meat as many of us have had. I know, certainly reflecting back on my days when I was doing competitive bodybuilding, holy crap, did I eat a lot of like chicken and tilapia and
Yes.
stuff like that. If I went back, I would do it way differently than that. I would not be eating nearly as much of that. I'd be having more diverse diets, less of the animal protein. I would having mix of more legumes and just a healthier diet, generally speaking. But I think protein is important for helping you lose weight, maintain weight, have a good healthy metabolism, have muscle as you age. And there's many ways you can get your protein. It doesn't have to all be animal sources. And I also think you can be healthy on a completely plant-based diet. It requires you being more dialed in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things, making sure you get your micronutrients so you don't develop deficiencies. But there's many ways to do it. But I think the principal approach is generally what I've described so far. And I know it's a deeper discussion than just a 5-10 minute recap.
No, that was very good how you summed that up. And I am in agreement. I think we need that variety. I find that, yes, they do overdo the animal protein in the bodybuilding diet. I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of laughing as you were saying that because I competed for 10 years and it was the frequent meals. So at one
Mm-hmm.
point, I was on 7 meals a day, and every meal had white rice or a potato or
For
a sweet
sure.
potato, and the tilapia, of course. I can't touch tilapia to this day. It
Yeah.
completely grosses me out because I had to eat it cold, and it's
I've had it
terrible.
too.
Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
slime, it's really bad.
Yeah.
But I love that I feel like you touched on the bio individuality here because we are different, and some people can do better with a little bit more plant-based, some people
Yeah.
will do better with a little bit more meat. I recently found out that I have a gene where I'm an over absorber of cholesterol. So I have to be cognizant of the amount of saturated fat. Now,
Yes.
is all saturated fat bad? No. But in my situation, in order to be healthy, I have to really watch the cuts of meat that I have, how much
Hmm.
I have, how many eggs I have, because I absorb that and it drives the cholesterol up. So that, the idea that one thing is going to work for everyone. And I love what you said about the fasting because there are so many different ways. I know with women in that perimenopausal window, sometimes they can't tolerate those longer fasts
Yeah,
because their bodies are already dealing with problems with cortisol and it
for sure.
pushes them over the edge, so to speak.
Yeah.
My husband, on the other hand, he can do that one meal a day. He's
Hmm.
totally fine on that, maintains his muscle, maintains a healthy weight. I would not do well on one meal
Yeah.
a day at all. I would not be able to meet my macronutrient needs.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you. And the other thing we're seeing too in this field of nutrigenomics and figuring out what genes are impacting absorption of things, as well as some of us have deficiencies in some of these key enzymes that lead to energy metabolism in the mitochondria. So we have higher needs for certain kinds of vitamins. And I think this is the frontier where we're moving to is getting it even more personalized. But a couple things that I'll say to people just generally without necessarily even doing testing is to start to when you're dialing in your nutrition, at first you got to create habits. And like I'm a big fan of the idea that we want to balance consistency with variety. And I think earlier in the day, especially if you're a busy parent, is a time to have a couple very consistent go-to meals. Have 1 to 2 to 3 go-to breakfasts that don't take a lot of time to make, that are foods that you enjoy, quick to whip up, don't have a lot of digestive stress, give you a lot of the macronutrients and the micronutrients. It could be the eggs, the fruit, the protein shake, whatever, but like dial that in so you don't have to think too much. And at least like now you've knocked out one healthy good meal that can be like a cornerstone of your day. It's a decent idea to do the same thing for lunch, which could look at like batch cooking, overcooking the dinner the night before so you have
Hmm.
leftovers is fine. The protein and salad kind of scenario works well and you can get that out in the world. And we have a lot of clients who even eat bread, right? They just have some Ezekiel bread, which is a sprouted organic bread, or an organic sourdough if they tolerate that. And you could have some avocado, some turkey, and Ezekiel bread kind of scenario. And that could be like a wonderful macronutrient balanced kind of meal that's easy and consistent. I think dinner is a time we can have a little more variety. You don't have to eat the same thing all the time. We teach a concept of building perfect plates, which is if you took a blank plate of food, you fill half of the food with, or half of the plate with any kind of fibrous veggie you love, steamed asparagus or baked asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, side salad, collard greens, like whatever you want to do on there, but some kind of like good diversity of the fiber. And there's a lot of vitamins and minerals in those green vegetables. A quarter of your plate is some kind of protein you love of any variety, and then a quarter of your plate is some kind of healthy carbohydrate. This could be the sweet potato. This could be the quinoa, rice, some kind of healthier version of pasta. Or if you do want to go even more low carb because you find that works for you, just sub that out for some more healthy fats. Throw a half an avocado in there, throw some nuts and seeds, do some other things like that. So this is just a framework. And I think frameworks are important because it gives you a chance to practice and dial in things for you. And as you're noticing, the goal is to be consistent, not perfect. And if you have these go-to meals that's going to give you a behavioral hook every day, you start to practice and notice how your body feels on certain kinds of foods. If there's foods that make you bloated, that cause your body to produce mucus, you get a stuffy nose or a scratchy throat after you have it, or you feel achy or tired, that is a food that your immune system in your body probably doesn't tolerate well. And part of this journey is for us to figure out what those are for us. Obviously, you can do those food allergy tests, but they're not completely conclusive. Like just because something comes up on those means you have this food allergy. It actually just means your immune system is used to producing certain kinds of immunoglobulins because you may eat that food with high frequency. I think it's a little more important actually just to pay attention to how your body responds. Like I know for me, I am both lactose intolerant, meaning the milk sugar irritates my GI tract because I lack the enzyme, but I'm also sensitive to the milk proteins. If I have too much dairy, I get a stuffy nose. And so it's not a great food for me, but it could be a very health promoting food for someone else. So you just got to figure these things out through observation.
Oh, agreed. I'm the same way with the dairy, although I can do, interestingly enough, sheep and goat. A
Yeah,
little
me
bit of
too.
that is
A
fine,
little bit.
but
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit, not too much. Gluten, I can do Ezekiel bread. I can do a little bit of sourdough, but
Hmm.
again, if I tip it over,
Yep.
I have issues with that. So it's information because I teach macro tracking, but I
Yep.
don't teach it like, okay, you got to do this the rest of your life or you got to hit these numbers perfectly. I
Yes.
teach it because I want the women to learn, to collect data, to
Yeah.
see because sometimes someone does it. I didn't know when I first came in. I thought, my idea of getting protein was a peanut butter sandwich or a grilled cheese,
Yeah.
and I had no idea of the fat content, protein
Hmm.
content. And so I find it's an eye-opening experience when
Yeah.
it's done correctly and people can learn and take that data. I agree with you on those food sensitivity tests because I used to use them and I stopped because interestingly enough, we were all coming back with the exact same
Yeah, because it's the foods
sensitivities.
everyone's eating. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this cannot be right.
Yeah.
And then the other problem was women freaked out. They were
Hmm.
like, I can't eat this and I can't eat that. And I don't like hemp seeds. And what am I supposed to eat? And it
Yeah,
was psychologically difficult for them.
for sure. I'm with you 100%. Yeah.
Now, you're a naturopathic doctor.
Hmm.
I'm switching gears a little bit here, and I'm just curious. Everybody kind of chooses a field in health or medicine that resonates with them. Why the naturopathic path?
Well, I mean, it just became so apparent to me, especially as I was initially on my healing and fitness journey and getting into bodybuilding and fitness too, how powerful the fundamental stuff that our bodies need: nutritional input, supplementation input, exercise input, and that is the foundation of us being healthy. And I looked at the allopathic medical model right now, and it's a reactive sick care system
Hmm.
that largely prescribes pharmaceuticals to mask deeper problems that must be corrected with lifestyle. And I was already so bought in and already had my macro based nutrition education from all the fitness I was doing. And I realized that right now people are sick with all these chronic diseases because we're not managing our food and our exercise, our movement, and our sleep. And so I aligned so deeply with a medicine that practices as the foundation, that prevention is the best cure. We treat the whole person, that we use these nutritional interventions as foundational. And it was kind of just outside of the traditional system. Now, I love traditional medical care. It's actually literally saved my life in many instances. I think it's great for a lot of things like rare disorders, trauma, acute infections, amazing for all of that. But it's absolutely mismanaging the long term care and the reason why people are actually sick. It is able to prop people up, keep them on statins, and keep them extend their life, but not their health span. And so I just align with a medicine that is so deeply tied to fitness as well.
Yes, if we could just get on board with that with Western medicine, where we're looking at prevention rather than reaction,
Yeah,
because you see this with type 2 diabetes, because it can
for
take
sure.
10 years to develop. And so somebody's coming in and those blood glucose levels or their fasting insulin is gradually creeping up, and they don't do anything. And they're like, well, you're in the normal range. And of course, normal is, these lab values. They're they're
Yeah,
comparing it to the population. Well, if you have
right.
a population that's sick, that's where those norms are coming from. So then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you have diabetes. Now you need to go on this medicine. And it's been slowly developing for all these years.
Exactly right. Totally agree.
Now, when you're working with your Fit Mother project, your Fit Father project, they come in. What is your, for lack of a better word, like onboarding process? How do you get the? Where do you start? Because there's so many habits. There's sleep, there's movement, there's water, and it can be really overwhelming to throw, because that's what I used to do when I first started, throw all of
Yeah,
the
me
things.
too.
It doesn't work very well.
So, interestingly, what I found from helping so many clients in the process I've refined is before we even start with like nutrition in like the daily routine, the very first thing we do is we run people through like a deep mental, emotional process of journaling and reflection that we call creating your mission statement. And what this is asking a series of very deep questions about what you really value in life, what your core values are, how your health is intimately connected to those core values, What happens if you don't make changes and you future cast out 5, 10 years? What happens if you do? Like, we just get deep and we start to make this emotional connections, because a lot of people, quite frankly, struggle with their health because they're not connected to what is over tritely said their why, but their deeper reasons, because that is the subconscious motivational connection framework that helps you stay on track, that gives you this internal drive to want to succeed. And we need to consciously connect to that. And I believe also write it out as a concrete mission statement about, this is why I'm taking on this journey. This is why it matters to me. This is why it connects to my family, to my finances, to my spirituality, to my alignment. And we're creating this web and this tapestry. Because the truth is, a lot of people who feel and they say things like, I don't have the time to exercise, or I don't have the time to eat healthy. What they're really saying is that in my mental construct of what my life experience is, I have my life over here and my body and my fitness is some different circle over here, that they're two separate things that I must try to juggle. And I feel like I don't have the time to manage them. Where the real truth is, it's collapsed down into one experience. You are embodied, you have a body, everything you do, everything you experience is coming through this vehicle. So the quality of this vehicle, how you tend to it, your habits here is coloring and affecting everything that you have. You have one integrated life. Now, the routines that you do to tend to your body need to be woven and integrated into your life, but make no mistake, it is no different. How you're showing up as a parent is directly tied to how you're eating and how you're exercising or lack thereof. Your feelings of, honestly, like just internal self-love is absolutely tied to the current state of your body. So when we start to understand the tapestry, it creates a deeper level of motivation. So that's the first step. We do this and we have our members write these down, post them, share it with our team, as well as our community of all the fit mothers or fit fathers. And it's a powerful experience of getting this clear and forming those new neuro associations. The second step is, I believe, in the hierarchy of importance. Like, after you get like the mindset and the motivational framework down, the next level is not exercise. It is getting that good daily nutrition rhythm in and fixing sleep if there's any dramatic sleep patterns. And I'll talk about sleep first. Like, just the way the body system works. If your body is underslept and you have just like real obstacles in that area of your life, it creates a hormonal environment that makes it very hard for you to lose weight. Cortisol is higher, your blood sugar levels are higher. It changes actually how the brain perceives its hunger and appetite signals. So you're more hungry. When you exercise and add more stress to the body, you end up like not putting on as much muscle and sometimes even losing muscle. So we got to like fix the sleep component if that's totally out of whack. But if that's like baseline, good, decent, keep those habits optimized for sure. Nutrition is the main thing. So we help people decide on when their proactive meal timing schedule setup is. When are you eating? This is like the scaffold and the structure. And we're not like eat 6 meals a day every 2 hours. Like, I obviously did that like you when I was into fitness and we thought that was necessary. It might be 2 meals a day and a snack. It might be 3 meals a day and a snack. It just got to fit for every person uniquely. It might be intermittent fasting. It might not be. But when you get that scaffolding in place, it gives you something to practice on and build structure so that your nutrition becomes proactive instead of reactive. And then we can say, oh, here's your go-to meal for this meal. Here's your go-to meal for this meal. And now here's to play around with a little more variety. So we get into the nutrition and we start to create a routine that someone can do. And the routine kicks off with every day starting off with 20 to 32 ounces of water, that rehydration ritual, getting some minerals in the body, whether that's some Celtic sea salt or some, mineral drops or something. So we do the hydration through line, we get them on the proper nutrition, and we get them daily walking. So we're building progressively. Now, if someone coming in might already have these things in place, be like pretty decent on nutrition, sleeping well, they'll do the mindset stuff and they're ready to hop into exercise right away. Great. We get you on those circuit training workouts a few times per week. We're making sure you're progressing, tracking your progress, posting and being accountable inside the group. And the way we build the journey out to make it really engaging and fun is the first phase is 30 days. It's a 30-day focused experience for you to like really get a lot of momentum and energy. And then we have phase 2 plan. That's the next 60 days, phase 3, which is the next 90 days. And we have a full 1-year curriculum. That's really just fun and a very clear process for people to follow. And everyone does it a little bit differently, but it is a progressive building of habits that starts with mindset into nutrition, sleep, into daily activity, into formal workouts. And then obviously we talk about supplementation, recovery, and all the more nuanced topics as we go.
I love this so much, Dr. Balduzzi. When you are starting with somebody and you talked about really getting them to write down, their why, I'm assuming
Yes.
what is going to keep them on track, what they can come back to. I'm doing a functional medicine coaching certification right
Nice.
now. And the fundamental of this, and it kind of surprised me because I thought, oh, we're going to get into the nutrition and into this and into that and into the sleep. And we do. We talk about all of those things, elimination diets, the whole bit. But the fundamental process that we focus on is bringing someone back to that why, building that intrinsic motivation, building on their strengths, and bringing them back to their bigger vision. They actually call it the
Yes.
vision rather than the why. And we're supposed to tap into that vision in the first 3 minutes of a session. And then we keep coming back to it and back to it and back
Yeah.
to it. So when somebody has that resistance, you bring them back to
Yes.
the vision, and then they figure out, okay, this is what I can start with. This is what I can do. I can start right here rather than me saying, I want you to go do XYZ right now.
Yes, it's so true because I think it's engaging different aspects of, you can even see the brain circuitry. One is the do XYZ is engaging the logical aspect of the brain, and then the expression that is the mind, that people can be overwhelmed. Can I do this? Is this going to work? Whereas that deeper connection to the vision or the why is getting into these emotional areas of our brain and our circuitry. It's literally creating new neuroassociations and
Mhm.
creating this fertile soil so that when something comes in as a plan or a strategy, it's sitting in a deeper bedrock of good feeling, because we want to feel good and we want to feel aligned on these plans. So I so align with that. And that's also the same process for everyone listening. If you ever feel like you're gliding off track, because inevitably that will happen. It's like everything in nature and seasons is cyclical to a certain point. There's a time to harvest and there's a time to plant. And sometimes life throws some challenges at you and you're gliding off track. That is not like a bad thing. It's not like a wrong thing. It is just happening, and now it's a chance to reconnect with your vision again, to get it back on track more quickly. So it's a constant process, not something that you do once, but it can be something you do deeply at certain periods throughout the year. New Year's is a good time. Your birthday is a good time. Anytime you're gliding off track is a good time. Some people like every 90 days. Either way, connecting to this constantly on a daily basis, but also deeply periodically, I think is a wonderful practice.
Yes, and that vision can change as you move through life. It certainly has
Yes.
changed for me, where I started out very focused on aesthetics with
Yes.
bodybuilding. Nothing wrong with that. I wanted to look great, and that's why I got into it. And now being in my 60s, I'm like, well, longevity.
Yes.
I want brain health. I want
Yes.
strength. I don't want to be placed somewhere, out of my
Yeah.
home. I want to be independent. And it shifts and it's going to shift, and that's okay. And I think this idea, because people get stuck on, and this is where diets bother me, it's like there's a beginning and an ending. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, there's no ending. It's
Yes. No ending.
ongoing.
Yeah, and actually, come back to the challenges of the fourth decade of life that you brought up earlier. I think that's actually part of it. I think in the third decade of life, many people are still riding on some of the aesthetics desires, and not to say you
Mhm.
lose those in the fourth decade, but there's oftentimes a lot more pressures and responsibilities for taking care of people outside of yourself, your kids, your work, other things like that. And people haven't got to the fifth or sixth decades of life where they're feeling like, oh crap, I actually really need to make sure I'm focusing on longevity. It's like this weird gap of stress and pressure. And so that's a really powerful time for people to get connected to their motivation before, you start to experience, oh man, this is actually about longevity. And if you can even start that mindset when you're like in your 20s, you'd be in the
I
you'd be in,
know.
you'd be like really set up, right? You'd approach things with such more ease and more intelligence if that was the motivation. But I'll say the aesthetics thing is a very natural human experience, and it is good, and it's a layer you can carry with you. But if it's the only driving factor, you are in trouble. And I think
Mhm.
when maybe people think it's their main driving factor, it's because they haven't just gotten deeper underneath the surface yet. There's deeper reasons, because yeah, we want to look good, but the fact of these bodies is, insofar as we tend to them well, we still get old and wrinkly and eventually die. It's like the big joke of this all. You know what I mean? So we have to kind of let go of that, the tight grip on that at some point.
Yes, I was laughing as you were talking about the 20s because I have kids in that age group that I try to get them thinking about what's ahead and saying, okay, you can do things right now to make the decades ahead better. But boy,
Yeah,
there's so much in the here and the now. They don't really want to hear it.
for sure.
Now, I just want to touch lightly on stress. Do you have a stress management component of your program, I know men and women both experience stress. I think men experience it in a different way because I've seen my husband and he's very much that let me fix this. So if something can't be fixed or remedied, this can be extremely stressful with his job and his daily life. How are you telling, or not telling, but encouraging men and women to handle their stress?
Well, I think stress is so fundamental. I think we kind of loop back to the idea of the blue zones and those longevity superheroes. I think one of the main things is they keep their bodies in less stress states because they typically are having a lot of time outside, a lot of good connection, ways to have healthy stress outlets. I think right now we have such a fast paced culture where a lot of people are always pushing on both ends and they're not feeling restored and their nervous system is in that sympathetic stress state. And I just know this to be fundamentally true that the people who live the longest and the way the body actually heals and stays right is when you're in that parasympathetic, rested, relaxed, connected state 95% of the time. It is okay to hop into sympathetic. And I know it's easier said than done. I'll get into the nuance of maybe how we get there. But I'm saying, like, for optimum human longevity, you want to be as the least stressed as possible, be able to activate during intense exercise or some immediate situation that really needs your heightened state. Because in the parasympathetic state, your digestion's working, blood flow is better. Your cortisol, which is a acute stress hormone, has a lot of damaging effects when it's elevated and persistent. Your immune system and your mitochondria do not work as well. So that means more infections and less energy production internally. So we need to find a way to release the load. And there's a couple things. There's like a mental and psychological aspect of this, and there's a physiologic aspect. Sleep is the restorative aspect of these body systems. Like we have the yang being the active time and the yin being the relaxed, nourishing time. Sleep is our nourishment. And so, really prioritizing that, doing everything you can do to make that better, is going to give your body more physical robustness because it doesn't matter how good you do on everything else. If you're missing on sleep, your body is going to be perceiving a low level chronically stressed state. So that just like has to be in place. You just can't dodge that. And we could go deep into the sleep discussion, but I'll just say it's more important than people realize to correct the light in their environment, to get morning sunshine, and to get a lot of the artificial light out at night because we're circadian beings and we respond to light in terms of how melatonin signaling works and all that. Optimize your sleep environment. Stop drinking alcohol or at least heavily limit that. Don't eat as late at night. Get good sleep. Now, the psychological aspect is interesting because we could take two different beings and they can go through the same exact situation and one person could be a stress ball and the other person would be okay with it. And that comes down to our experiences of attachment to things or how much we worry or have trained our brains and our minds to worry and anticipate things. And so any practice, whether that is journaling, whether that is prayer, whether that is meditation, whether that is breathing or breath work, that helps you uniquely drop into that parasympathetic, calm and relax your mind and get into a state of more trust and flow, whatever that is for you, needs to be a mainstay of your day. For me, it's prayer and meditation. And that happens in the morning, in the evening. It is the most fundamental part of my routine besides the water hydration in the morning. Like I get up, I drink water, I sit down and I meditate and I get into this deep, peaceful place inside of myself. And it wasn't like that initially. Like I've been doing it for years and years. So now I'm able to kind of drop in and feel that real connection. But that's important. And I think on the bookends of the day are really important times because these are the transition periods of our consciousness where we're going from the dreaming, sleeping state into the awake, active state. It's like a really powerful time to set a good tone that'll help us carry whatever load comes during the rest of the day in a lighter way. And at the night is the perfect time before we go into sleep and we're subconsciously processing all the stuff that happens to find a way to create some closure in the day to drop the load. So now you can see how this all interplays because if we're not doing these management techniques on our stress psychologically, we will probably not sleep as well, or we'll make poor choices during the day, or we just get more worked up that it's going to affect our physiology, which feeds into more psychology. So it's a holistic game. Again, easier said than done, but I would say the bookends of the day, the morning, the evening, having some kind of practice, even if it's 1, 2, 3 minutes, really short, that enables you to get into a more calm state in whatever way you do that is, I'd say, almost as pivotal for health as even good nutrition. It's like it's so tied because we know the mind creates the physiology in the body, which then feeds back into the mind. There's this intimate dynamic connection.
Yes, agreed. And that connection between the gut and the brain,
Yes.
I mean, it just goes on and on. But I agree with the book ending the day. I've used that term too quite a bit because we can even be affecting how we sleep with how we start
Hmm.
the day, that exposure to the light,
Yes.
taking time for I'm the same way, prayer for me and my faith is huge when I
Yes.
need to bring myself down even in the moment. But it's so interesting. I wear this Aura ring and it now tracks the resilience and the stress. And boy, is it accurate because sometimes I'm not doing something stressful, but I'm thinking something stressful.
Yeah.
And this, it picks it up and there will be a spike in my
Yeah.
stress. And I'll go back to that time of day really useful and realize, wow, I was ruminating over something or I was worrying about something. It wasn't even anything I was physically doing. It was
Right.
just what was happening in my mind. So you're spot on with that. Well, this has been so insightful. Thank you so much, Dr. Balduzzi, for being on the show. And as we start to wrap up, was there anything that we didn't cover that you think would be useful for the listeners to know? And then also, how can they get a hold of you, work with you, find out more about you?
Well, I'll just say this. My first off, thank you. I really did enjoy the tapestry of the conversation, all the little nooks and crannies we got into. I believe, obviously, being the person running Fit Father and Fit Mother Project, that our health is certainly about us and our longevity and our future, but it's also about our families. It's also about setting a good example for them, being around for them. And I want to invite everyone who's listening to this to really take a moment, either now or after this conversation, to really just envision and feel in your body how expansive your health is and all the things that really fit underneath this big umbrella of your health. Like, this is the conversation I wish my dad would have had, an internal connection. And I want you to have this opportunity now to really feel that your family's in there, all your hobbies and passions and everything you want to still experience. It's inside this container of health. And that's such a gift when you realize that, because it can really be an adventure where you direct your life and create better, healthier choices and go on this journey of progressive health. And of course, people like me and yourself, we help people do this. And so if you are interested and inspired, we have our Fit Mother Project program, as well as our Fit Father Project program. Those can be found on our websites, fitmotherproject.com or fitfatherproject.com. And on the website, you can see all of our case studies. You can see our programs. There are free trials. We have supplements, a lot of great stuff there. And if you like hanging out on social media, our YouTube channels are probably our best places. We have hundreds of videos, really amazing stuff there. And we also are on Facebook and Instagram as well. But if you're interested, I would say just go to the website, check out fitmotherproject.com or fitfatherproject.com and learn more about the programs. Start a trial. You can hop inside of our community and see this exact process that we talked about today. You can actually start like trying it yourself and feeling the benefits.
Wonderful. I'll make sure all of this is in the show notes. Quick question. If someone is not in their 40s, do you have individuals that are over 50 in your groups?
Oh yeah. We have individuals who are in the 80s. Yeah, it's not like we have a
Oh,
bunch of just people in their 50s. Yeah, I mean, I'd say the majority of our members are in their 50s, and
hmm.
maybe some in their 60s if there's like a bell curve. Yeah. So
No, that's awesome. Because I was thinking, parenting, you're saying fit mother, fit father. You're still parenting even when they're adults.
fit
You're
grandmothers and fit grandfathers too. We have a
true,
lot of those.
true, true. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Balduzzi, and I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your wisdom. Would love to have you back to touch on things we didn't get to today.
Thank you, Carol.
And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye for now.